Okay, Your Worship, we are now streaming and recording.
Thank you
So-
very much. We'll call the meeting to order at 2:05 p.m. This council meeting is being held by electronic participation pursuant to section 238 3.3 of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, and the municipality's procedural bylaw number 2020-020 as amended. This meeting will be live streamed on the municipality's YouTube channel. The video recording will be uploaded to the Municipality of Trent Hills website following the meeting. We do the adoption of the agenda. We resolved that the agenda for the council meeting of July the 7th, 2020 be received and adopted. Would the clerk take a recorded vote, please?
Mover and a seconder, Your Worship.
Okay, a mover and seconder, please. Moved by Rick, seconded by Rose. And
Councillor English.
Rick, you got your mic shut off.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf.
Yes.
Councillor Redden.
Yes.
Councillor Tully.
Yes.
Councillor Bradney.
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes,
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Hearing none, seeing none, we will carry on. Minutes of the council meeting held on June the 16th, 2020. Be resolved that the minutes of the council meeting held on June the 16th, 2020 be received and adopted as presented or amended. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Ken. Second by Mike. Call the vote, please.
Councillor Tully.
Yes.
Councillor Bradney.
Yes.
Councillor English.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf.
Yes.
Councillor Redden.
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes,
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
thank you. We have no public hearings and we have no deputations. We do have a presentation and we'd like to welcome Denise Marshall, who is the project engineer for the County of Northumberland, and Brian Ruck, Vice President of Transportation for GHD. And they are discussing the Camelford Bridge, Trent River Crossing, and the arterial road network. Denise, you're it.
Thank you. Thank you. So good afternoon, Mayor Crate and members of council. Thank you very much for allowing us to come today and present to your council. I will just sort of give a brief introduction to sort of the members of the team that are here with us today. As you mentioned, my name is Denise Marshall. I'm the manager of project engineering at Northumberland County. On the call is also Mo Panu, who's our director of transportation, waste and facilities, as well as Kayla Esahir, who's our senior project engineer. We also have our consultant team, GHD, who's with us. So Brian Ruck, who is the Vice President of Transportation with GHD and is also the project lead on this project, is on the call, as well as Rebecca Ferrugia, who's a Senior Structural Engineer. So they are sort of the two main points of contact at GHD among a large team that's working on this. So we're very excited to be here today. As many of you are aware, there's been a long process for this new crossing in over the Trent River in Campbellford, and the environmental assessment was finalized and approved by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks in 2017. So since that approval, we have moved forward and developed the RFP to move into detailed design stage. And this was awarded to GHD in early 2019. So over the past year, GHD has been working closely with the county, as well as some of the staff of the municipality and other stakeholders to move this project forward and start working on our detailed design. So we're here today because we're at the stage where we have a conceptual design. So we sort of reached about that 30% phase, and we would like to share it with sort of our broader stakeholder group and the public to get some feedback, and so to reach out to everyone so they understand sort of where we're at in the process. So today Brian's going to kind of walk us through a presentation. So I just wanted to kind of give a bit of an introduction, and I'll be available as well to answer questions as we move through or at the end of the presentation. But at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Brian.
Great. Thanks, Denise. That's a great introduction. You didn't leave much for me to say now. What I'll do is, as Denise said, GHD is working on the detailed design since about January of 2019. So we've done a lot of work, and it's time to share some of the results of that work. I understand that we're not sharing the screen, so I'll just talk through the slides. So the first one is just the cover. The agenda, what we wanted to, Denise talked about the introductions already, just give you a quick update on where we are with the status. One of the things we do want to spend a bit of time on is any changes in the 30% design that Denise was talking about from what was previously approved in the ESR. So we'll spend a bit of time just updating you on some of those things. As Denise said, we're at the point where we will be entering our consultation phase or our more active phase of the consultation. Normally that would include an in-house public meeting or in-face public meeting. Obviously, in 2020, where we are right now, we're not doing that. So we will be doing a virtual open house, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then what are the next steps? And then finally, if there are any questions. So moving on to slide 3 and then 4. As Denise said in the introduction, this thing has been kicking around for a long time. It's been a long road here. So where we are is right down towards the right end. We're in detailed design. And part of our messaging going forward with the public is to make sure that people understand that whether the bridge is happening or not, or where the bridge is going, is no longer open for debate. That was approved in the ESR back in 2016 and some follow-up work afterwards. So our role is to take that design and refine it and take it to the detailed design phase so that we can tender it for construction. So the next slide, so what's the slide 5, an overview of the project. I think it's very easy for us to just look at it as strictly a bridge. However, we wanted to show you this because it is actually more than the bridge. The bridge is only effective if the road network that attaches to it is efficient in handling the traffic volumes that are expected to use the new crossing. So it isn't just the bridge, there's some road modifications that go along with it as well. So that's why the project is deemed to be a bridge and the arterial road network that approaches that new bridge. So the next slide, EA commitments that came out of it were actually quite benign when you think about some of the difficulties and consultation that happened during the ESR. So these are pretty simple things. So the risk management plan for road salt, talk about adding cycling lanes to the final design. This is something that we're seeing all across the province. Any new bridge that's being built, because these things tend to have a lifespan of 75 years. We are looking to, they're not just for cars and trucks. They accommodate all kinds of different users. So we haven't seen a new bridge in the last couple of years that doesn't have accommodation for cycling and pedestrians. So we'll show you what the cross section of the bridge looks like. Post the final design to the website. Again, that's pretty simple. And then just submit the design and the record of consultation to MOECC afterwards. So moving on to the next slide, as Denise said, there has been a lot of work undertaken so far. A lot of it is fairly invisible to people. So there was a survey done, a lot of traffic studies, a whole host of environmental fieldwork to support the design. Stage 1 archaeology, which is a desktop review. There will be some stage 2 happening soon, which is an in-place in fieldwork. But one of the big things we did is review the ESR design to see if there were any improvements that we could identify. And we'll talk about those a little further down. And developed, as I mentioned before, the cross section for the road and bridge. And that now includes bike lanes and pedestrian facilities as well. And we have had a fair amount of consultation with Trent Hills, and I'm going to give a shout out to Jim and his team of being very, very good partners for us here and very accommodating and helpful. So thank you for that. And we've met with Parks Canada a number of times because the river itself is under their jurisdiction. And one of the things we do want to speak to today and highlight it, because I think it's important for council to know this, is how the property requirements that were identified in ESR have changed to accommodate the new design. So moving on to the next slide is just a changer onto the proposed changes. So now I'm on slide 9. So originally the intersection at Grand Road and Alma was looked at a couple of options in the EA. They looked at traffic control signals and a roundabout. The EA concluded that the traffic signals were a better solution. However, we've done a lot of work since that time and identified a roundabout now as preferred treatment, and we'll show you why and how that is. We've been able to do some optimization to the bridge to lower it a little bit. What that allows us to do is actually purchase less property. So that's handy, but it still has all the appropriate clearances for navigation and whatnot. We eliminated we shortened the bridge a little bit. There was a span on the east side of the river that we couldn't quite get our heads wrapped around what it was for, because it just kind of traversed empty land. There were no roads under it, no sidewalks, no anything. So we looked at eliminating that. So we shortened the bridge for a couple of things, benefits of that. It saved a little bit of money. Plus it also got rid of an area where people tend to congregate, but you don't want congregating and vagrancy and graffiti and things of that nature. The bridge shifted the west end, so the side closer to Canadian Tire shifted slightly southwards. And when I say slightly, I mean just a couple of meters. And that was to reduce some property impacts and to accommodate the proposed roundabout. So moving on to the next slide, this is what the EA approved design looked like in the vicinity of the bridge. So the bridge, if you see on near Grand Avenue, actually widens out to 3 lanes, and it does that to accommodate the traffic signal, so a left turn lane. So that's one area that we're going to look to make some changes, and I'll show you those momentarily. Then over on the east side at Frank Street, it showed Frank Street closed with a cul-de-sac, and that was what was proposed in the EA. So typically when we look at when we get a design project, there's always different optimization. You get additional information. It isn't necessarily saying that what was done before is wrong. It's just a matter of looking at it with some additional information and surveys to see, is there a way to optimize it? So that's really what our effort has been so far. Moving on to slide 11, this was the original concept for the roundabout in the EA. And you can see it was very, based on this, I can see why it wasn't selected, because it looked at removing 4 homes on Grand Avenue and had quite a significant impact to the parking lot of Canadian Tire. And I think, I don't know the rationale behind why it looked like this, but this was something that when we looked at the RFP stage, we said, we think we can do something a little bit differently here. So if we move to the next slide, this is what we're proposing for that intersection now. Now, on the top and to the top left part of this slide, we only, if you remember the previous slide, there were 4 homes being removed. This one is only removing 1. So we were able to save 3 of them and have no impacts whatsoever, and just a very, very minor strip off the Canadian Tire parking lot to make this fit. So in terms of, and the main way we were able to do this is we were able to talk to Parks Canada and look at shifting the intersection slightly to the east. So there will be a slight infilling of the river there, but that accommodates a new pathway that was not part of the EA. So now if you're walking along the river on that side, you're out there with your family on bikes or whatever, we are going to add a pathway that goes underneath the bridge. So people don't have to come up and cross the traffic to continue walking. So that path that's showing there actually goes underneath the bridge. So people, they have the option of either coming up and going to Canadian Tire or Tim Hortons or whatever, or continuing on without conflicting with traffic at all. The other thing that it does with the roundabout is, you may notice the bridge is now only 2 lanes. We don't need a left turn lane with the roundabout. So we were able to narrow the bridge as well. The next slide is just a sort of a bigger area picture of what's proposed there, and you can see how the roundabout fits in nicely on the west side, and the three homes to the north of the roundabout on Grand Road are not affected in any way, shape, or form. There's no property requirements from them at all. And you can see that the Canadian Tire parking lot is had virtually no effects either. Now, in order to do this on the east side, we have to shift the bridge slightly to the south, but those homes were already identified as being impacted in the EA, so there's no real change there. I will talk to you shortly about Frank Street, how we've changed that, but I just wanted to, I don't want to get into all of this detail, but a lot of people, when we do PICs, particularly in areas where there aren't too many roundabouts constructed yet, we go through an education process with people to educate them as to what it is and why we would select this over a typical intersection, signalized intersection. And the bottom line is really quite simple. The results are that they are more efficient than a traffic signal, they're far safer, and they really control speeds. So if you look at an urban area where you have pedestrians and cyclists and vehicles, controlling speeds is always a challenge. And I'm sure that you as counselors get complaints all the time about speeding on different streets. And so this is one of the advantages of that as well. The number of accidents is actually reduced by quite a bit, particularly entry accidents, because if there are accidents in a roundabout, they tend to be fender benders as opposed to high-speed collisions that can result in fatalities and serious injury. The roundabout as designed will accommodate fire trucks, farm vehicles, tractor trailers, the whole bit. So everything that would go through a normal intersection would go through this as well. This next slide is something that we will use at the PIC because we have been hearing from agricultural users that some of the previous constructed roundabouts and intersections haven't been very receptive and conducive to large vehicles. This one will handle any large farming vehicle that wants to get through it, and there's no issues with it whatsoever. Slide 16, talked earlier about property impacts. Here's one at Bridge Street and Simpson, where on the bottom right, where the red is the new curb line to allow trucks, that little corner there was not identified as being impacted in the ESR, in the EA. The reason that we're looking at doing this is we expect that there is to be additional traffic heading towards the bridge, particularly trucks and other vehicles. And that corner is simply too tight to handle those kinds of vehicles. So we're proposing to move the curb line back a little bit, and that requires us to acquire a little corner of property from that particular owner, and that was not identified previously. Moving down the road a little bit to Simpson and Alma, there was no real treatment shown here in the EA, but when we looked at how trucks and large vehicles would make this turn, there's two ways to do it. One would be to remove the house in the northeast quadrant, which we didn't want to do, or impact the town-owned lands to the west and allow the vehicles to turn properly. So what this intersection does is it accommodates larger vehicles that are heading towards the bridge. And the previous design didn't really address this at all. Moving to slide 18 at Frank Street, this was what the EA looked at. It closed Frank Street and with a cul-de-sac and impacted both of the homes on the east and west side of Frank Street, right at Second. They were shown as, I believe, Denise, I think they were shown as buyouts at that time. What we have proposed instead is to construct a laneway and connect Frank Street to Saskatoon. And that allows for better access for fire vehicles and ambulances and locals as well, and has very little property impact at all. In fact, the home to the east side is not affected at all. And I believe there's just a little sliver off the one that was originally shown as a full buyout. So that's quite a change from what was designed. And I think the next slide here is a three-dimensional model looking at it towards the west. So you can see that the brown shading, I'm not sure what it looks like on what you have in front of you, but it's a single direction laneway, and it connects Frank Street, so that provides full access, and it allows us to, this part of the road here has retaining walls on it, and it allows us to provide some landscaping and sort of hide the wall to some degree with some landscape features. Okay. All right, so moving on to slide 21, property acquisition. This is again in the area of the roundabout. The hashing doesn't show well, but in the red hashing show that the first two properties on the the west side of Grand Road would be full buyouts. That is no longer true with the roundabout design. The first property on the corner is a full buyout, and we have managed to actually eliminate all property impacts from the property to the north of that. You can see the shaded blue on the Canadian Tire side, the property that's required for the road there. Actually, at Alma Street there, that's actually an existing condition where the property boundaries are a little funky, and the road isn't actually on the right-of-way for some reason. So the only impact here at Canadian Tire is that tiny little corner that's shown on the south side there. So the green was also partial property acquisition. That's what it was showing. So Canadian Tire was never a full buyout, it was always a partial, but you can see those other three properties on Alma and Grand that were shown as partial properties. There is no longer any property required from those three properties. So looking over onto the, pardon me, the east side where Saskatoon is, again, the red on the north side, those were shown as full buyouts. They are no longer full buyouts. All the green was shown as partial property. So on the north side, none of the property isn't required from any of those properties any longer. Now on the south side, where we had to move the bridge, the road slightly to the south, those were the first four properties were all shown as full buyouts. The first two definitely will be. The third one is potential, depending on how close the road is to the existing house. And the last two to the east are just a sliver taking from the front, so they are not full buyouts. And this is fairly consistent with what was shown in the EA as well. One other area that wasn't identified, and this is at the far east end, at Coburn and Center Street. It's an existing condition where you don't have proper sight triangles. The sight triangles allow vehicles to properly and easily see vehicles that are coming at an intersection. So in order to clean this up when we're doing the arterial road, there are some very minor property requirements that are required from both the north and south side. So there's very little triangles that are required. We do need to, it's ideal if, again, for truck movement on Center Street and Coburn, if we're able to move the curb back to allow trucks to turn without entering the other lane. So that's really what this is for. I talked earlier about shortening the bridge. I'm on slide 24 now. There was that east span that Saskatoon is shown under the second span. So what we've done is just simply eliminate that east span and use a short retaining wall instead. So that's a benefit as well. The proposed cross-section on the bridge, this was something that was referred to in the EA that needed refinement. So this is not atypical from, there's a few new bridges being built over significant waterways, including the one in Kingston. So what we're proposing here are two travel lanes, two on-road bike lanes, and sidewalks on both sides of the bridge, separated by a traffic barrier. So the next slide will show it to you a little bit more friendly and graphically. So on this one here, this is a concept. The lighting, the railing, and whatnot is still open for debate in terms of aesthetic details. But essentially, this is what it's going to look like. So you have two lanes, plus the on-road bike lane, plus sidewalks on both sides. This design is kind of nice because it protects the pedestrians from vehicles with a crash barrier. That concrete barrier will protect them, whereas it still allows them to have nice views of the river when they're walking across the bridge because it'll be an open railing design on the outside. The next one shows just sort of a bird's eye of the same kind of concept. Again, these are some of the details that we will be looking to get feedback from the public in terms of the aesthetics. There are a number of different options. The next slide shows all kinds of different railing options and bridge options that are possible. So we'll be looking to get some feedback. We have engaged a bridge architect that's working with us on the details of these kinds of things. So those are the kinds of things that we'll be looking for feedback. And then the next time we go to the public towards the end of design, we'll be able to show people what the actual bridge will look like and actually have a fly through and show them what things will look like after construction. Denise talked about our stakeholder engagement. We're obviously we started that right from the beginning with mailouts and letters and try to get some interest again in the detailed design. What will be happening in July is we'll be doing our virtual open house. Normally, as I mentioned earlier, we would be doing that in person, but we can't do that. It's a little different. And actually where we've done online open houses before, and we have, there's some significant advantages to these. First of all, you can keep them open for longer. Normally on an in-person PIC, you have 1 or 2 days, and if people can make it that day, fine. If they can't, then they're kind of out of luck. But we're going to keep this open for a month, so people will be able to look at the details and contact the project team at their leisure for a 1-month period. At the beginning and end, we'll do a virtual presentation and a Q&A session. So if people want to ask questions, they can do that. So members of our project team in the county will be there to answer any questions and take any queries. We'll also have the materials available in publicly accessible locations in Trent Hills for those that are not comfortable or don't have the technology or technological skills to look at something online. So they'll be able to still look at it hard copy paper like they used to. And then we'll take comments any way we get them. It'll be by mail, phone call, anything. And the nice thing about the online open house forum is it allows people to provide their comments directly online to the project team. So that's a very useful thing. And this is, you'll actually see this in more detail, but it's a very, very interactive, very simple to follow, lots of plans, lots of graphics so people can follow through at their leisure, look at what interests them, and provide direct comments on things that are important to them. In terms of, just back here for a second, letters have been mailed to all of the property owners that were affected by requirements, whether they were originally identified in the EA as having a requirement and now no longer. So each letter was customized for the owner depending on what their particular circumstance was, whether it was a full buyout and it's still a full buyout, or whether it was a full buyout, now it's a partial, or whether it was partial and now it's nothing. And the other one is where there was nothing and now there's something. And there's a couple of owners that I showed you at the extremities where that is the case. So what we will be presenting, and we don't have time to show you all of the material, but this is what we intend to have available at our open house platform. So the overview, a lot of background, and address some of the things we've talked about today, the changes from the approved EA and why we're making them, and then present that conceptual 30% design that Denise was talking about earlier, the bridge, the roads, the roundabouts, property, etc. Spend some time on roundabout education. We will probably have videos embedded in there as well, so it shows people how they walk through a roundabout, how they cycle through a roundabout, how they drive through a roundabout, and we'll have those as well. And then we'll talk all about the environmental, of course, because there's a lot of environmental activity that we're going to be addressing as well. So there's the bugs and the bees and the fish and all these things. What you will be seeing, a little heads up, is in the next week or so, you will be seeing a drilling rig showing up on site. That is doing geotechnical investigation for the bridge, both on the land and in the water. So a little heads up if you get a call from one of your constituents, that is not construction. That is still part of the pre-engineering phase. It's not the start of construction. So that's a little heads up. That'll be starting in the next week or two. And then, so the next steps, we'll distribute the notice for the online open house the week of the 13th. We go live around the 23rd or so. We'll have a Q&A a few days after. So after people have had a chance to look at some of the material and digest what's there, we'll do that virtual Q&A. Have another one just before wrap up, and then close out the open house around the end of August. And I believe that was all I had. So if there are any questions, comments?
Council, anyone have any questions? Do you have a question, Gene? Yes?
Well, comment, Mayor. I'm impressed with the changes that have happened, and this roundabout is a thing that may solve my concerns. I think we're in the position that we should be putting a 40-kilometer speed limit from Bridge Street down to the gas station. I'm getting complaints a lot from particularly people that are trying to get in and out of Tim Hortons, or the property owner beside Tim Hortons has to back out of their road all the time. And they're not getting any grace from drivers. But that whole area, there's the seniors that cross from Forest Dennis, and the activity at Busy Bees and the gas station. I think we should start a process to consult to move that down to a community thing. But what I am really happy about is the size of the roundabout. I was in Ireland 15 years ago, and that was my first experience of those crazy things. They're over there, they're just like dandelions here. This appears to be large enough. My concern a little bit is there's a lot of truck traffic that comes north from Pete Archer's granary elevators there and other places in Ontario going to the Kawartha Ethanol and Havelock. And most of those are trains which are two sets of trucks put together, trailers put together. And hopefully the roundabout is big enough with that soft inside cushion there to accommodate them. But, you know, a lot of the things they've discussed here that lessen the anxiety of some of the property owners that are going to lose their homes. We own the one that's on the west that's going to be taken out, so that's good news. My other comment, and this is a kind of a sore point I've had with the whole thing, expecting truck traffic to go up that Simpson Street hill and turn left to go on to 30 West, unless there's a lot of major road development to level up that intersection, the sight lines of that are just hazardous as they are now. Either that or the people cannot park on the east of that intersection because you just can't see now. And if you expect a lot of truck traffic to do it, they can't go up there and change on the hill and be safe. But maybe there's a plan to elevate the road before you get to the intersection. And if that is the case, I'd be immensely happy. That's my comment for the moment, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Denise, any reply as far as that corner?
Sorry, muted. Thank you through you, Mayor Crate. That is something that we are looking at, and we understand that that is a fairly steep grade. This is one of the difficulties when you are trying to do a design and work with the existing constraints. You know, we're trying to address what we can. We are looking at what sight lines are, and that is one of the reasons why we did identify that that corner for property acquisition that wasn't there originally, in order to help assist with that truck traffic movement to be able to make it through that intersection. Again, it is a very just difficult intersection because of the grades, both on the east side and on the west side, or sorry, north and south side, because again, it goes up. So there's not a lot of play. We have looked at some different scenarios, and we'll do whatever we can to try to to reduce that grade, but there's not much to work with without having huge impacts to some of the other properties along there. So again, by looking at that site triangle and getting that property, that does help with sight lines. You know, we are looking sort of at the control of that intersection again to see how we can optimize traffic moving through there.
Thanks, Denise. Catherine?
Yeah, thank you. I've been involved with this, some of you know, since the early 90s, and even before that, we were having discussions about the bridge. And as many of you know, I haven't really been a fan of a second crossing, but I do have to say that I am extremely impressed with what I've seen with the redesign and the changes. Like Jean, there are a number of things that were of great concern, and I have to compliment you on what you've looked at, what you've seen, and what I see today. And Jean did open up my question as well with regards to the Simpson and the Alma section, is that we've done a lot of work, you know, the bridge, the Grand Road, the intersection. I'll reserve judgments on the roundabout because I don't like them, but I'm like a lot of people. I don't get to many, so that's why. But once we get on to Alma and then around to Simpson, I want to make sure that we're not just giving it short shift, that we've actually taken a good look. Should we be transferring a lot of that traffic? It is a very heavily traveled area, the west side of the river. I've been involved with a lot of construction on Simpson and Alma with the servicing and so on. And I don't want to be taking trucks across something that underneath has got a lot of hidden problems. And that intersection as well, going up onto the Grand Road and onto the link, the connecting link. So I'm curious if there was work to be, if you do find out, I guess, Denise, if you do find out there's a lot of work there to be done or more, how much have you already looked at? And if there were more work to mitigate some of the damage, more than just taking a few corners to ease the turns, but if it shows up crossing the creek and into that area, we're going to create problems. Whose responsibility is it to cover the costs of all of that work if it is necessary?
Sure. So through you, Mayor, great. So I think just to clarify, are you concerned again about sort of some of the underground and sort of the base of Simpson and Alma, that there might be some concerns with the structure of the roadway itself that we might run into?
Well, yes, I'm wondering if that whole connecting link, once you get onto Alma, you're heading down towards Simpson, that whole area in there in the past has had some issues that I don't know that we totally corrected in the past. And if we're starting to reload a lot of and divert a lot of traffic into there, is now not the time to be looking at it and putting that into our future plans?
Yeah, so we are looking at, as I said, as Brian mentioned, I mean, this isn't just a bridge project, it's also an arterial road network project, and that is a big component of this. So we will be doing more geotechnical work, so we'll be going out there and doing some drilling. So they'll be drilling on barges in the actual river itself for the bridge, but we will be doing some drilling along the roadways to understand, you know, again, what's existing and what we have to work with. So that's all being looked at as part of this, and that road design is part of this assignment, and, you know, making sure that it can handle the traffic that's going to be going through there. We do understand that, you know, I think about approximately 50% of the traffic will be diverted sort of through this this corridor. So we're, you know, we are looking to bring it to an arterial road standard.
And just at whose expense?
Oh, I mean, this project, it is currently, it's under a county project. And I think right now, as we work through, we're understanding sort of what the costs are going to be associated with that. It is under, again, it's a county function at this point, but we're obviously looking for various funding from various levels of government. So, you know, we're hoping to have provincial and federal funding to help with that. But I mean, I think right now it falls under the umbrella of Northumberland County. And, I guess unless there's some really unforeseen things that arise out of this, if there's some utility infrastructure that, again, was installed incorrectly that, might be a utility company that needs to address, then that's something that, we would follow up with them on. But again, the road network itself and the bridge is sort of falling underneath this county project. So I would anticipate that falls within the budget that we're looking at for the overall project through the county and other levels of government.
Thanks, Denise. I didn't realize you were such a good dancer. That's great. Does anyone else have a?
I do, Bob.
I can't. I don't have. Who's that?
Rick.
Okay, Rick, you're in.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say hi to a couple of my favorite people, Denise and Mopanu. Hi, guys.
Hey, Rick.
And I have the cul-de-sac. I'm sorry, Kathy, but I do like cul-de-sacs. I find they keep the flow of traffic moving. I find they are definitely a traffic calming thing. The problem I see with it, Denise, and I just wanted your opinion on it. Right now, currently, people pulling into Tim Hortons at times can be backed up to almost Alma Street right now. And that is where our roundabout is going. So I see maybe a little problem with that. Like Tim Hortons almost needs a turnoff lane or something there themselves. They should have. But that was my first thought when I thought about the roundabout. I'm a big supporter of it, would love to see it, but I am concerned about Tim Hortons traffic, especially in these times right now.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, through you, Mayor. I know this is something that we have been sort of thinking of from the very beginning. Obviously, it is sort of some tight quarters in there with the number of entrances, and entrances is always a bit of a challenge. So we have the Canadian Tire entrance and then the Tim Hortons entrance, which is obviously a very active location. And as it is, I know that there are concerns with traffic. So one of the things with the roundabout is I think that it actually improves that traffic flow compared to if traffic signals were installed at this location. One thing that we talked a little bit about, I think in the presentation that Brian talked about, is traffic flow. And that's really what a roundabout helps is, you don't get that stop and go traffic. And with traffic signals, you could have traffic sitting there queuing back on a red past the Tim Hortons, whereas with the roundabout, you're going to keep that traffic moving. So, there may still be some challenges just because there are existing challenges with the Tim Hortons, and that's more to do with their capacity on their own property, which unfortunately spills out onto the roadway. But hopefully we shouldn't be exasperating those with the roundabout and by being able to keep traffic flow moving rather than sort of stopping traffic and having large queues develop there before they're able to clear out when they get a green light. So we will be considering that and sort of keep looking at that moving forward and trying to do some simulations when we're doing the traffic studies and keep that in mind to try and minimize that as much as possible. And if we can come up with some ideas and in order to address it even more, then we'll look at that as well.
Great. Thank you, Denise.
Okay, Ken, and then Rose.
Yes, I want to compliment the county too on the changes they've made that I like what I see today much better than what originally was out there. So I think you've done a great job on that. And like Kathy, I hate roundabouts, but I'm slowly beginning to appreciate them because they're appearing more and more places where I drive. So I guess I'll get them figured out. My question had to do with the east side. It looks like there's 2 vacant lots being created. I'm assuming they'll be owned by the county, but would those lots be suitable for building?
Right, those 2 properties, through you, Mayor, those are properties I think that were identified to potentially relocate a couple of the properties or the couple of homes that we would need to buy out. I'll have to confirm that, but again, I think they were ones that again would be properties that we would own and then we would relocate the other homes and then look at either reselling those or repurposing those in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, Rosemary.
Thank you, Mayor Crate. Yeah, I want to congratulate you on the design. I'm really pleased with it. I've looking at your truck apron, and I think that's a great safety feature for the transport trucks, for farm machinery, etc. bridge itself, the pedestrian walkways, the cycling lanes, I'm just so thrilled to see all that accessibility on and off of the second bridge there. The railing, I was wondering, depending upon, and I know that's down the road, the how we pick which railing we want to see on the pedestrian walkways. I'm suggesting, or I'm assuming, I should say, that they are they will be stand up well enough against salt and corrosion over the winter months with of course, when the bridge has to be treated with salt, etc.
Yes, thank you. So through you, Mayor. Yes, so there's, as Brian mentioned, there's a couple different options that we're looking at for the railings, and they are generally, again, the type of material that we use are to stand up against sort of the harsh winters and the harsh weather that we deal with. Some material will do better than others, and so some will have a longer lifespan than others. So that's something that will be sort of used, I guess, as we decide or put those options forward, and something for everyone to sort of consider that, you know, some may not look as pretty but will last longer, whereas there's some others that might look a little bit nicer or more aesthetically pleasing but may not last as long or require more maintenance, I guess. So those are sort of the things that will be pointed out as some of those pros and cons for each of the different types or options that are available.
Okay, thank you. And one last comment. I'm very familiar with roundabouts. Started using them 30 years ago when I moved out west to Alberta, and I think that they're great. I was really pleased to see that come into the design. They do calm traffic. I feel they are safer. We're going to be able to get our big vehicles and farm equipment around there and off the bridge much easier, much safer. The only concern I have, and it's been spoken to, is Alma Street coming on to Bridge Street. That is a bad corner, and I see that there is some, it looks like there is some slivers there to help ease that, which is great. But I think we need to keep an eye on it. It's a pretty dangerous corner when you're coming up there and trying to turn on to Bridge Street. So thank you very much.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, I just have a couple quick questions. On page 17 of the report, going back to Simpson and Alma, where we're widening there, is lot 32, is that the one you're talking about that is municipally owned? It would be to the...
Yes, the so that's our southwest side, or sorry, I guess the northwest corner of that intersection.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And then on page 19, there's the two houses, 25 and 29 on 2nd Street. Those are the last two sort of at the end of the new bridge build that have small slivers that would be encroached on. Where are those properties going to have access to? It's obviously not going to be at the very end of that bridge, I wouldn't think.
No. For those two properties, that's there would be a relocation of the access. I think we had there are some drawings that we've looked at to identify that they would take their access off the back, and so they'd still have access to the road, but it wouldn't be straight onto 2nd Street. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Just to, if you're keeping track, I'm in favor of a roundabout. I think we're winning. I'm not positive. I just wanted, with Frank Street, that is now a one-way street going north. Will it be one way going south, or how will we handle that?
Yes, I think, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong in this one, we were looking at having it come one way coming south, and then you could come out and use that shared laneway.
Yeah.
I believe that's the way we were looking at it, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And it's a great plan, I think, going forward. Anyone else have any questions? If not, I will, first, I'll thank you both for a great presentation. And we will get ready once you put the barge in the water for the questions that I'm sure will come to us. And I will get the resolution out. It's be resolved that the PowerPoint presentation presented by Denise Marshall, Manager, Project Engineering for the County of Northumberland, and Brian Ruck, Vice President, Transportation for GHD, re the Camelford Bridge, Trent River Crossing, and the Arterial Road Network be received. And can I get a mover and seconder, please?
So
So
moved.
move.
Okay, move by Rose, seconded by Jean. And I'll call the vote, please, Doug.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you very much. And again, thanks Denise and Brian and the rest of your crew. And please, I know we're looking very forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will carry on to report the BLG 2020-01, the building report for the year end of 2019 and the summary. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Be resolved that staff report BLG 2020-01.
Your worship, Councillor Metcalf.
Okay, folks, if I haven't got everybody's picture on the screen all the time. It depends on, it may get better as we get less people, but so if you just give me a little shout, I can't see everybody's hand go up. Okay, Mike.
Okay, just a quick clarification. I'm assuming BP is building permit, SP is septic permit, and SFD is single freehold dwelling.
Okay, so my IT person just came in, so now I do see everybody. Okay, so do we have the answer to Mike's question?
I believe you're correct. Claude, are you on the line?
Claude's on mute at the moment. If he can unmute.
Single family dwelling is one, septic permit, and what's the other one?
I think BP is building permit, or I'm not sure.
Oh, I have Claude at my
Councillor Metcalf is correct.
Come to my screen.
There you go.
My microphone wasn't working.
Oh,
SFD is single family dwelling.
Okay. Next question, sort of to do with this same report. The 2019 had plumbing fees on there for $33,000. Obviously, that goes to the county. I know we went into a 7-year contract. Is that 2022 or 2023 that we can renegotiate that contract?
Maybe Jim can answer that. I don't know when it starts or ends.
I think we can give notice this year to opt out of it in 2022.
22. Are we anywhere near being able to do that like we wanted to?
We are moving towards being able to do that.
Okay, sorry, that was a little bit of a side, but it was in there.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else? So could I get a mover and a second for the report? Moved by Rick. Seconded by Ken. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. We move on to report for BLG 2020-02. The building report to the end of June 2020 was the summary. Any questions on that?
Just a comment.
Go ahead.
It's with all things considered, it didn't come out too bad in comparison with everything we've gone through yet this year. So I was relatively pleased to see there wasn't a whole lot. I know the total construction value was down, but that depends on what the construction was, I suppose. But as far as the number of permits, they were within ballpark, all things considered.
Thank you, sir. Can I get a mover and a seconder?
Thank you, Cody.
So moved.
Kathy? Second by Mike. Call the vote, please.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. We move on to report EDC 2020-07, Rainbow Crosswalks. Anyone wish to comment on that?
Your worship, if you can give me a moment, the author of the report is just joining the meeting now.
Okay. Okay, so you're live, Kira? Okay, so any questions? So who had, oh, Rick?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I do support it. Don't get me wrong. Warkworth is kind of unique. They don't have a controlled crosswalk. And I think I know where it's going to be put, Kara. Is it at the stop sign right on Main Street? Because I would hate to see it on 29, for example.
Yes, I believe that is the case. Neil could confirm because he did provide the 3 preferred intersections based on the request.
The safest would be right at the stop sign at Main
Yeah,
Street.
I think the plan was to avoid county roads and also to avoid any intersection that's already been repainted this year with the thermal treated paint.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I just went, oh, go ahead, Rose.
I was just going to say, I'm really glad to see this come forward. We looked at this a couple of years ago. It was brought up in the community and never really got traction. So I think it's great and the timing's great. And I'm looking forward to it moving ahead.
Thanks, Rose. Yeah, I also look forward to going forward with this. And I should comment, I talked with Bonnie Wilson yesterday, who did start an online petition. And she tells me that she had 600 signatures. So obviously there's some support in the community, and I think it will be well received. So I would take a mover. I'll read the be resolved that staff report EDC 2020-07 from Kira Mees, Community Development Officer, read the Rainbow Crosswalks be received for information. Mover to seconder, please.
I'll move.
Moved by Rose, seconded by Rick. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you very much. Report CLK 2020-11, the Library Board Interview Committee. Before I start to read the motion, anyone have any questions? Kathy?
Not a question, just a suggestion, if I may, and I've spoken to the clerk regarding this, is that I'd like to invite the current chair to sit in as an observer on the interviews as well. I think it would provide her with some information and some further understanding of the role that the municipality plays with the work of the library board. And she is new and she's doing an excellent job, and this would just add some additional support for what she's attempting to see happen with our board going forward. If you see fit, then we will extend the invitation to her.
Thank you. Doug, is that a problem as far as extending an invitation to sit in?
Through your worship, no, if the chair is sitting in and just observing the interviews, it's still the two individuals that are recommended in the motion are the actual interview committee. So the chair would be sitting there hearing the responses, hearing the questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll read the resolution. We resolved that staff report CLK 2020-11 from Doug Irwin, Director of Legislative Services Clerk, read the Library Board Interview Committee be received for information. That a Library Board Interview Committee consisting of Councillor Redden and Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan be established to conduct interviews of qualified applicants. That Council give consideration to increasing the number of members appointed to the Trent Hills Public Library Board to be at least 7. That the Library Board Interview Committee make recommendations to Council on the preferred applicants for appointment to the Trent Hills Public Library Board for the balance of the 2018 to 2022 term of Council, and that the Trent Hills Public Library be advised of Council's decision under the Director of Legislative Services Clerk's signature. Do I have a mover and seconder, please?
So moved.
By Kathy. Second by Mike. Would you call the question, please, Doug?
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Brodney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf? You're on mute. That looks like a yes.
Yes.
Mayor Craig?
Yes.
Carried by 7, your worship.
You. And we have Lynn Phillips, CAO, read the 2018 reopening plans.
Thank you. I just wanted to give as a verbal update to council on some of the latest developments as we move through our COVID reopening. So number one, as you now know, the municipal office is open by appointment only for those services that cannot be conducted remotely, effective yesterday. I don't believe there's been any appointments made, but that is an option now available to the public. In the coming weeks, we'll look to ease those restrictions further and allow more public in the building for other services. We are completely set up now in the office in terms of the barriers and the various safety measures that we put in place to receive the public. So we'll keep you posted on that as we move forward. The other item is regarding portable washrooms, which has been a big topic throughout the COVID closures. I'm happy to report that the Trent Hills Chamber of Commerce did receive some funding for staffing to maintain some portable washrooms that are going to be placed in the downtowns of the 3 urban centers. This is effective this week. I believe the plan is to have them in place Wednesday, which is tomorrow. So we're working with the chamber on this, though they've spearheaded it. The requirement is that the washrooms be placed in downtown, so it's really to assist those who are shopping and visiting the community. There's going to be 4 placed in Hastings, both sides of the river, 2 in Warkworth, and 3 in Campbellford, again, both sides of the river in Campbellford. So we're providing the cleaning supplies, but the Chamber of Commerce is coordinating it and has looked into hiring the staff that will be cleaning those washrooms twice per day as per the health unit requirements. Is there any questions about that before I move on to the next item? You look like you wanted to ask me something, Councilor Metcalf. Yes.
Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank Nancy Allenson and the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario for their funding.
Locations, Lynn?
Yeah, the exact locations in Hastings, there are 2 going near Banjos, The other is going on the north side in the partition by the gazebo where we normally have the accessible washroom. And there's another going on the space sort of directly across the road from where the arena was, so that park area. In Warkworth, there'll be one on Main Street, secured next to the town hall. And then there'll be another in Mill Park. And in Campbellford, there is going to be I believe it's one in Old Mill Park and one potentially on the green space by the river here. And the other spot they're looking at is by the Bank of Montreal. So I believe in Campbellford, they're consulting with the BIA to determine the exact locations for approval.
Thank you. Rick?
Quick question. Did I read this correctly? It's just for 8 weeks?
The funding is for the summer only, yes. So it'll be 8 weeks from this this week, yes. Just for July and August.
Rose?
So the chamber washroom, it will be open as well on the west side of the river?
I believe so. This wouldn't impact whatever program they have for their washroom. I believe it's open, yeah. This is separate staff that would be maintaining these.
Okay, thank you.
And then the other item I wanted to update council on is the Crowbridge Park opening. As you know, it was decided to open it over the weekend on a trial basis to determine how it goes. It was extremely busy as suspected. Again, largely because it's a heat wave and it was a long weekend by most people's standards. So the crowds weren't unexpected. It was fairly uneventful, which is good. And there were times when there was cars gathering along the roadside, but we've managed to control it somewhat. This was largely because our bylaw officer was there for really the entire day on Saturday, which was the busiest day. And again on Sunday. So lots of warnings were handed out on Saturday and tickets were actually issued on Sunday. And with a amended bylaw that's coming up in the agenda, there'll be the opportunity or the ability to do parking tickets all along that stretch going forward. It is a bit concerning though in that, you know, we had hoped that maybe there would be some self-regulation with the number of people there, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So even though it was extremely busy, people still wanted access to the park. So we are looking into if there's some other support we could add at the park on the weekends in terms of resources, be it a contractor staff, to actually sort of police that number of people. So when the park is at capacity, the gates would be closed and only additional people would be allowed in when some were to leave, similar to how other businesses are operating. It's just a resource issue at this point. And if we're able to put something like that in place, there's no reason why, you know, it couldn't continue to be open. So we're working on that at the moment. There were a lot of people there over the weekend, so.
Catherine?
Yeah, I want to thank staff for the work that they've been doing because I know it's been a very difficult situation. And my involvement with the crow conservation, we've been trying to monitor it and provide whatever backup and support. I know Tim's been quite interested. One suggestion when you talked about, or question, when you talked about maybe additional staffing of some sort, at one point, other conservation areas did hire a security firm to at least it was more for the protection of the individuals from larger crowds or people that thought they could do more partying rather than just enjoying the park. And I think there's just so many that want to enjoy the park, it's hard to monitor them. But we also had another element that seemed to think that it was theirs to use. But there may be some information from Tim that he might provide you with, people familiar, because they were familiar with our bylaws and our rules for using it. And I support you. It's a great asset. It would be nice if we could really convince people the value of working with us. The other question I did have was the traffic. Are they parking still on both sides? Because it was difficult to get through there at one point. And what's happening with some of our farm traffic?
Okay, so to start off with the security firms, that is exactly who we're contacting. We don't have the resources to deal with that going forward. As I said, our bylaw enforcement officer has been doing it, but we just have one bylaw enforcement officer. So we do understand there are some firms that work with conservation authorities, and that's who we're reaching out to. So there'll be more information on that. Hopefully that works out. Yes, with respect to the parking, and that's why Ty was there. There were times when there were cars on both sides of the roads. That cannot continue with the ability to ticket from this point forward. I think that is the plan to do that. That is one of the main dangers, aside from the concern of overcrowding within the park from a COVID perspective. It's really a road safety issue, which has always been an issue there. That's certainly not new this summer. But now we'll have the ability to do some enforcement there. And as we discussed last week, we do have the full support of the OPP as well. And they recognize too that cars can't continue to park on both sides of the road. With the gates now open, it's not as bad as it has been for the last few weeks, which is one of the reasons why the decision was made to open it, because people can now actually drive in and, you know, park somewhere. But there definitely is still people parking on the road, yes.
Rick?
Yeah, Lynn, quick question. You mentioned capacity. Is there a capacity number in there?
There's not. I do know that the parking lots themselves will hold approximately 70 cars, I've been told. So that is plenty, depending on how many people would actually be in the vehicles, right? So what's happening is those 70 cars are, you know, parking, and then many, many, many more in addition to that. So if we were able to try and institute something that would limit capacity, we'd probably just base it on people safely parking within the existing lots, and that would be where it would end.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
Lynn?
Go ahead. Gene, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Lynn, I'm pleased to see that you've moved ahead with this. I went through there last Wednesday night at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, Canada Day, and at least have been 30 cars on both sides of the road. And I think we owe it to the neighbors there that they're not providing parking spaces for these people that want to use the park either. And then, you know, they're crowding their space. So I think this is a good move, and hopefully people will behave themselves, either that or it'll have to be closed, similar to the conservation on the other side of the road.
Michael, you had a question?
Yeah, I like to take this a little bit beyond COVID. I know we've got sort of issues right now with what the pandemic that we're in, but to look at this further, and I was speaking with Lynn a few weeks back and with Valerie regarding the lease agreement for the property and what we might be able to do with it. It ends March 30th of 2021, and like Kathy said, I mean it's an asset to have, but how much of an asset is it versus kind of a pain if we're not able to use it the way we kind of want to? There's a lot of pros and cons in the leasing and running of that park. And I'd hope that maybe some discussions coming up to March of next year would circle around some revenue generating possibilities if we go forward. And I know Peter has a fair bit of background in that sort of parks and revenues and that sort of thing as well. So I think there's a good discussion that could happen coming forward to see where we want to go with something like this park that really is a gem, but it has its challenges at times. Thanks.
Yes, certainly agreed. Yes, the 10-year operating agreement is about to expire. So yeah, we will certainly be opening those discussions with Crow Valley Conservation Authority and looking. It's a very different situation now than it was 10 years ago. So those are some of the items that we're going to have to look at with them. Mm-hmm.
Rose and then Kathy.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments, Mike. There used to be a fee years ago. I believe that we charged to get into Crow Bay. And I had a very irate grandmother call me on the weekend, and I got her settled down, and she was quite pleased by the time we got off the conversation. But that was one of the things that she brought up. She said, you know, we used to pay for that and we don't anymore. And she said that might be a way that will generate revenue for the municipality, but it might also be a way of helping to control the numbers that go in there. If people have to pay for it, then maybe they'll respect it more too. Yeah, so I'm glad to see that we are getting it patrolled. I was out there on the weekend, and there was about 12 cars on both sides of the road. The parking lot was full. There was one vehicle with a ticket on it, so I'm assuming that after Ty or the OPP were there, then people pulled their cars back in. Some of them were blocking other driveways too, or partially blocking some of residents' driveway. And then the other thing that came up was a splash pad, and I want to thank Lynn and staff for looking into that. The splash pad, I didn't realize it, but apparently there's a piece that's broke, so they can't open it. So until we get this part in, and so when I explained that to this lady, she was very, very, very apologetic and thanked the municipality for looking into all that stuff, and was quite humble by the end of the conversation. But it's little things like that, especially in this weather and with the COVID, that it's really starting to irritate people. But we still have to stay on top of things like the roadway where people are parking illegally. Someone's going to get hurt, and we know who's going to get sued. So, but I appreciate all that staff been doing out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, just back to Mike's comments. He's right. Now is the time that we need to be looking at what our future plans are. And I know that the Conservation Authority is certainly prepared to discuss this. And if some of you will recall, it was at this time last year that we actually had some of the residents showing up at the park and acting as greeters or hosts to the park and trying to get a sense of the sort of crowds that were coming and how we could serve them. We have an incredibly supportive and very concerned group of residents around the river and around the bridge who want to do their part. And I believe through those efforts, they did see, gain a better idea of the sort of challenges that we're having to deal with. And I guess in a way, I'm very thankful that it isn't this year, because I think it would be a tremendous effort for them to have to do the sort of things that need to be done this year. However, I know that both Peter and Lynn and some of the staff, Kelly, I believe, was involved, have made some notes, and in going forward, we have had discussions. So Mike, you're right on with what's happening there, and I think we need to continue following that up. It's an incredible resource. There's far more property there than what I realized, both sides of the river. And before we let the lease go, we at least should give the community an opportunity to participate in some discussions. Once we can have some public meetings, perhaps that will happen. For now, we're going to have to just, deal with it. But I'm sure there are plans in the works, and I know Peter hasn't let it drop yet.
Okay, so everybody's all in. Be resolved that the verbal information presented by Lynn Phillips, Chief Administrative Officer, read the COVID-19 reopening plans be received. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Ken, second by Rose. Would you call the vote, please, Doug?
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Bratney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. We are at report CAO 2020-11, video surveillance for Crow Bridge Park. Lynn?
Muted myself for some reason. Thank you. So this is a report where we're requesting council's approval to install trail cameras at various spots throughout Crowbridge Park for security reasons. We do have a policy in place for video surveillance. It does not, however, address trail cameras. There is also within our policy a requirement to have a public consultation period where the various stakeholders are consulted and the public have an opportunity to provide comment. So we're recommending under the circumstances that requirement be waived by council, so the policy be waived in order that we would be able to install the cameras sooner than later and as needed, essentially. This would be particularly helpful in the event that it does perhaps end up being closed, or certainly when it's closed for the season in the fall. There's an awful lot of activity that happens there when the gates are closed, so this would be very helpful. And also right now in terms of crowd control and understanding the activity that may be going on there.
Okay. Any questions from council? I will read the motion. Be resolved that staff report CAO 2020-11 from Lynn Phillips, Chief Administrative Officer, video surveillance at Crow Bridge Park be received for information, and that staff install trail cameras, equipment, and the appropriate signage at Crow Bridge Park. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
Hello, Bob.
So moved by Jean, seconded by Rose. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. We are at reports for members of council, and we'll start with the deputy mayor. You're it, Rose.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a quick update. I've been, excuse me, in on some meetings with the BIA as far as moving forward with the reopenings, gradual reopenings, et cetera, the stages that we're in. I have been answering a number of calls from constituents regarding Crow Bridge. Myers Island has become a bit of a spot as well. There was apparently a lot of tents there camping this past weekend, and garbage, and people parked illegally along the road as you go into the entrance of Myers Island. So I did go down and take a look, and I took a few pictures and talked to some of the residents, and they're a bit concerned about the late night partying and what's going on down there. Also, let's see here. Well, we had a Zoom meeting with the emergency operation group, and basically, again, it was back to Crow Bridge Park was one of the main topics of discussion. On the 3rd of July, toured the emergency operations, the new emergency operation base, along with a lot of you who are on the screen here today, and quite impressed with the job that our staff and the consultants have done there. Helped participate with the CHS graduation, the parade, and again, I was really glad to see so many of council and staff there to support our graduates. That's about it in a nutshell, other than just answering a lot of phone calls and concerns about going forward and reopening, and had a few calls regarding masks as well and protection for our business groups. So that's a wrap.
Thank you. Richard.
Just quickly, yeah, same thing, phone calls regarding our situations. I got a meeting and a virtual meeting with Trails Association Thursday, and also a meeting with Lower Trent, Zoom meeting Thursday evening as well. So anyway, that's it.
Okay, Jean?
I was pleased to participate in the Percy graduation parade as well as in the high school one. And sadly, I've been getting several requests from neighbors on Wallace Street pertaining to an individual at the very west end of it. I think there's property standards issues going on there, but also other issues like putting sugar in gas tanks. And this one individual apparently drained his gas tank and he got a second application of sugar the next day. So I think the police have been involved somewhat, but they cannot get a search warrant for the said place. And I'm going to ask some questions at PSB meeting tomorrow about this, because it's getting to a boiling point that the staff there's not enough activity happening to make our residents happy.
Great. Thanks, Gene. Michael?
Couple quick things. We had an ORCA meeting, talked about some of the impacts of COVID on the operations of ORCA and the work plan. CAO Dan has done a really good job of mitigating a lot of the losses that they're seeing there at ORCA, specifically with the reduced campgrounds. Beavermead and Warsaw Caves are the two that ORCA operates. They're now operating them with some limitations on rentals and that sort of thing. So he had all the numbers figured out for percentages that ORCA needed to rebound and at least break even for the year. I was also able to participate in the Pride Parade that was in Campbellford, and also toured the emergency services base as well.
Thanks, Mike. Ken?
Yes, I also toured the emergency service base, and I guess we're almost to the finish line. And I did go back and take a picture at night, and certainly the sign on the side of the building shows off very well. We've had no committee meetings. We do have a police service board meeting tomorrow, and we've been busy with bylaw and a number of things that we've had constituents concerned about. And I once again want to compliment bylaw on all their support and the action they have taken. And that's my report.
Thank you. Catherine?
Been involved with reopening of the library, and it's very shortly, if not already today, we can have curbside pickup at least once or twice a week in all 3 of our branches. And I think it's being subscribed fairly well as a number of online programs that are going forward. And you can now get your press reader as well as some archive information and a few other services. If you go on and take a look, it's getting a great response from individuals. Also watched the CVHS High School Parade along the bank of the river, and was in touch with Tim a number of times at the Crow. And at this point, I believe Lower Trent is in an early drought announcement situation, but the Crow is managing pretty well, and just asking people to be very careful with how they're utilizing their water. And still a lot of requests for permits, a lot of growth and development along the shorelines as people have more time to be at their cottage and tend to those renovations. July 1st, a couple of things. The first thing, I watched the opening and was really, really pleased. I've looked at the one from Brighton, and I think a couple of other communities, Port Hope, and I thought that our chamber did a fabulous job in the opening. And I'm sure that our town crier used pictures of himself from 20 years ago. I think he is a shining example of what can be done by our medical community. His voice is as good as it ever was. And the rest of the day's events were great. And it was a good showcase. I'm not sure how many have seen it yet. The weather was so beautiful that it was kind of tough to be inside at 11 o'clock to see it. I'd also like to make note, and I'm a little biased on this, but the O Canada, I thought Andy Thompson did a phenomenal job of putting it together Brian Finley's introduction was gorgeous, and the singers were pretty good as well. Your worship, I think that we should consider that an official version for Trent Hills and possibly utilize it for the opening of our building as well as any other official things that we do have. It's too good not to play more than once. And if you haven't seen it, take a look at it. They certainly deserve even a, if it hasn't already been done, a special thank you to the chamber and those involved from the municipality for at least giving us an official introduction for July 1st. And finally, I did my road tour on July 1st through the communities and had enjoyed some wings sitting beside banjos, and had a number of people asking where the washrooms were, so that's a good place to put them. I think the ones at the locks were a little oversubscribed that day from the look of the lineup, but it was a great day to tour. There were a number of individuals with their front lawns dressed up, including a boat that needed some water. And when we came through Campbellford, belly dancers in the park, which was really great. I had seen their video in front of the Yellow Bordello earlier that on the video, and then to see them in the park looked really kind of nice in their red and white costumes. So it was a good Canada Day, July 1st, and finished it up socially distancing with my grandkids in the water and us on the deck. So happy July 1st belated to all of you, but it was good. We did it well.
Thank you. Well, thanks to all of you. I would second Kathy's motion to use the O Canada. I thought it was spectacular. The music was great. I enjoyed Brian Finley and all the performances I saw, and I saw most of them, were great. And but I was really impressed by the O Canada and how it came across. The other things, I also was in the Pride Car Parade, which I thought went very well. I was in the CDHS parade, and I was at the Hastings Public School for their graduation. And again, as everybody, I've been doing a lot of phone and email work as far as problems out and about in the community. And did the fire hall tour last week, and boy, it's looking awesome. And I can hardly wait to see the council chambers finished. It's a beautiful room, and I think we will do ourselves proud when we are able to hold a council meeting there. I'm hoping for September, but we'll see what happens. And other than that, that's it for me. So I will say be resolved that the verbal information presented by, the updates of council, and now we're at Councilor Redden wearing masks in public places.
Okay, I'm not sure how much time you want to spend debating this, but I do think it's worthy of some comments, Your Worship, and I thank you for allowing me to make these statements. Council is aware, I'm sure, that I've spent most of my time at home being preoccupied with local mask making efforts project that was part of a larger community effort to help reduce the spread of the COVID virus through the making, the passing out, and the wearing of non-medical masks. The citizens of Trent Hills, as we all know, have done a tremendous job following the directives set out by the province and our local health unit. And other than a couple little blips here and there, it's been a safe community and a healthy community. Now that restrictions are being lifted and our community is becoming a little more open, we still have to be diligent. We can't stop following those practices of hand washing, staying at home as much as possible, and socially distancing when you go out. Now, Lynn has discussed the modifications several times that are being made to our municipal buildings in order to keep our staff safe. And I understand that there will also be changes in procedures depending on what services are being offered or which building that they're attending. There will be specific protocol to allow them to come in and meet with staff or access certain services. And I think that we'll leave it with staff to determine whether they're requiring a face covering or distancing or numbers. We'll leave it to them to determine and how that's going to go and how that progresses. But our community at large is experiencing that annual influx of summer residents and day trippers and all those other visitors. And I saw that myself just sitting in the parking lot and watching the license plates and the individuals going through Hastings while we sat there, and it's happening in all our communities. We had hoped that the summer months were going to bring us a little bit more freedom, but this isn't a time to drop our guard. And as many have said, this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. There's increasing evidence that the use of non-medical masks, and that's either the face mask or it could be a face shield, that it is effective in the fight against the spread of the virus. You still have to wash and distance and so on. But I just realized within the last 24 hours, the amount of announcements, new developments, and contradictory information that has been coming out that even more strongly recommends that we take the step of wearing masks. This week, the GTHA, Kingston, and Ottawa are just a few that have made some pretty strong recommendations and actually mandated the wearing of masks. My reason is not to ask you to put in a motion to mandate the mask, but at least to give a strong endorsement to our community, to our members, and in fact support the work that some of our businesses are already doing to have the people accessing their services and their businesses to require them and back them up in requesting for those masks to be worn. Some are already doing it. Some are just saying one or two at a time, but I think that we need to have a bit of a discussion, and as a council, give that strong endorsement and that backup to what our business community is doing, and make sure that we keep our people safe and healthy, and that we can move on and get back to what is going to be called the new normal.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Anyone wish to comment? Michael?
Yeah, just to go on what Kathy says, and I think it's really important as a business owner, and the last 3 weeks of trying to open up our own business, it is mandatory, and we did right from the get-go that we have any staff that are in close contact with customers, they're wearing masks. So all of our front staff are wearing masks, even though it's not ideal. It's difficult at times. It's hot. It's sweltering. But those are the safety precautions that we're taking in our community to make sure that everyone stays safe. It's unfortunate that, especially over this past long weekend that started on Wednesday and ended on Sunday at 10 p.m. It was a 5-day long weekend and a great rush. But seeing the number of people that come through that maybe are a little lax on being vigilant and thinking that, you know, they're in a safe place, it's a little bit disheartening. And if it did come forward, I would be in favor of a motion to implement mask wearing.
Thank you. Jean, and then Rose.
I suspect you're going to have a small percentage of people that are going to push back from this proposal, but given the results and the promise of the good results, it's like the seatbelt issue was 20 years ago. It's something that's been proven to save lives, and this will too. And I think it just publicly, when we're in stores, we should wear a mask and suck it up.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad Kathy brought this forward. I think it's a really important initiative. One of the things I think that people haven't thought about is the fact that we're in the warmer weather now. We're seeing how the virus is still spreading, but it thrives in the cold weather. And that's why we get our vaccines for the flu shot and pneumonia, et cetera, in the fall of the year. So I'm all in favor of whatever council decides to do. as far as putting in masks, whether it's mandatory, and those who can't wear masks, that they be allowed to wear shields. And this is for indoor use. As Kathy stated, I mean, right now there's all kinds of evidence, and if you go on the web, it keeps growing. The municipalities that are implementing face wearing policies and bylaws. There's 239 scientists as of today that now are claiming that the particles go way further, much further than initially thought of. Very, very fine, and they stay in the air a lot longer. So personally, I'm in. I wear a mask every time I go out. I don't care where I'm going. I've gone into stores, I've gone into public spaces where nobody has had a mask on. And I just smile and wave, and I'm going to wear my mask. But I do think that it's important that we get it right. I don't know that it has to be imposed on everybody. There's also right now, you notice in stores where there's no shirt, no shoes, no service. I believe it was Councillor Redden that mentioned it to me and said, why can't they put a little tag on the end saying no mask, no service? And I thought, great, good idea. You know, but all those little things to get it through to people that we're not out of this. And hopefully we come out of it sooner than later. I personally think that we've got a little bit more of a road to travel down. And I'll say it again, I've said it numerous times. I'm really proud of the people of Trent Hills. They've done a great job of staying safe and not spreading the disease. And we are getting the influx. We want the influx. We need it for our tourism trade, etc. All I ask is that we will be respectful of you if you will be respectful of us. If we ask them to wear masks, I honestly feel that people should wear a mask when they're out in public.
Thank you. Okay. I was going to, Kathy did make a suggestion that we maybe strongly recommend that this issue be brought forward, and maybe we could do that in a motion that would go to the health board saying we would support whatever action you take, and that we are looking forward to their directive. I guess something in that main. Sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree, Bob. That's what I was going to suggest. I wonder if we should seek some advice from the health unit. I certainly do recommend it, that's for sure, and support it. But I wonder if we should seek out a little bit of advice from the health unit.
Well, I think what we've seen, at least in the news the last 2 days, is that I think in Kingston and Toronto and I think Peel and a couple others, it did come down from the health board for their recommendation to require people to and that I think is the way to go. So we could receive Kathy's comments and then go to a recommendation such as that. Kathy?
I would.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, if Rick wants to propose something, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add also, I read this morning, Prince Edward County have done it now too. Just
okay.
as of this morning. I think it's starting on Friday or something, but they passed, the whole county down there passed this morning.
Okay.
It just said my internet's unstable. So if I count out, anyway. I think first of all, we need to give that strong endorsement as a council. And I think that we should also request that both the county and the health unit consider that they entertain mandating it on a wider area. I don't think it should be spotted here, there, and everywhere. It should be a larger, more regional. My suspicion is from some correspondence I've received around funerals and so on, and another thing I'm involved with is that there is a movement by the health units themselves, as the province has requested. And I think that we can at least give the support to our local businesses that are already doing this, and tell them that if they have problems, we'll back them up. That people don't have the right to come into their business if they don't comply with the rules that the business people have set. That's the first thing that we should look after. And then the second is to request that our health unit actually consider full implementation on a health unit basis. They're the ones that best know how to do it. They can take the responsibility and we can support them in doing it. So I'm sure Doug's writing something up very quickly. No? Yes?
Your worship, the motion's not on the floor. So what if we take the motion that is in the agenda cover and include into it something along the lines of, and that Trent Hills Council supports the use of non-medical masks when out in public spaces and enclosed areas where physical distancing cannot be maintained, and that the County of Northumberland and the Halliburton Kawartha Pine Ridge Health Unit can be requested to consider implementing mask wearing within their respective jurisdictions, and that they be advised of council's decision under the clerk's signature.
Moved by Kathy.
With one exception, one change, your worship. Rather than support, I would prefer the word strongly endorses.
Okay.
And I'll move it.
Moved by Kathy.
I'll second.
Second by Ken. Doug, you take the poll.
Councillor Redden.
Yes.
Councillor Tully.
Yes.
Councillor Bratney.
Yes.
Councillor English.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
Absolutely, yes.
Councillor Metcalf.
I agree with the idea of the motion. I am going to say no because I don't see why we can't make that decision without the county or the health department.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
Carried by 6, your worship.
Thank you very much. We are now at the consent agenda. We have the minutes of the Eastern Ontario Trails Alliance meeting held on May the 14th, 2020. We have the minutes of the Trent Hills Public Library Board meeting held on May the 19th, 2020. And we have the minutes of the BIA Board of Directors meeting held June the 17th, 2020. Anyone have any questions on any of those? All right, be resolved that the staff recommendations with respect to consent agenda items 10A to 10C be adopted as printed. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please?
So move.
Moved by Gene, seconded by Ken. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor Bratney.
In favor?
Councillor English.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan.
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf.
Yes.
Councillor Redden.
Yes.
Councillor Tully.
Yes.
Mayor Crate.
Yes.
Carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. We are now at communications correspondence from the Hastings Revitalization Association, re the Hastings Ballpark property. Anyone have anything, any questions on that?
I just have a quick comment.
Yeah.
I was through you, Mr. Mayor. I was at the meeting when this was brought forward to the Revitalization Association, and there was quite a discussion on what they were doing or what they were asking as far as the letter, and I think it was really positive what came out of it, in the fact that they're really just asking to be informed and sort of to be able to sit around, well, maybe not sit around a table right now, but to have the discussions with us about future opportunities with the ballpark. So it was a really good discussion, and really it was just a letter of openness saying, we're here, we want to hear what your ideas are as well.
Thank you. Okay. Be resolved that the correspondence received June the 14th, 2020 from the Hastings Revitalization Association, read the Hastings Ballpark property be received for information. Do I have a move by Mike, seconded by Rick? Would you call the question, please, Doug?
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bratney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you very much. Now correspondence from Nancy Boyven, Campbellford Minor Hockey future opening of arenas. Anyone have any comments on that? Rick.
Just a question. I see Peter has joined us. Thanks, Peter. How do you see this working out, Peter? Because I have been asked in the village a couple of times, do you think the arenas are going to open up? Do you think minor hockey is going to run? I have read what Hockey Canada, the rules and regulations they have in place now, that's entirely placed on the municipality. So what's your thoughts on it, Peter?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Lynn, do you want me to do my kind of report now?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Peter's actually prepared to speak to this, so hopefully all those questions will be answered, yeah.
Okay, so just excuse, I'll be looking off screen because I'm reading it off another computer here while I'm speaking. But so maybe just some backstory. Hockey Canada and Ontario Hockey Federation, as well as ORFA, which is the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association, which is our Parks and Rec professional organization, have all put out documents in anticipation of what might be able to happen if facilities can open. None of those documents are specific to, you have to do this, this, or this. It's more guidelines on reopening and some strategies around that. There are some facilities that are open in big centers like Toronto with very, very limited access for training only. And I'll speak to that when I'm going through kind of the work that we've been working on. I've been researching consistently across Canada and the United States, looking for examples of municipalities, cities, towns, owners that have opened facilities, how they've done it, if it's been successful. And there's not many, considering the number of facilities that are out there. And a few of them, one in BC in particular, opened and closed within 3 days because no one followed any of the protocols that were put in place. So that's a good case study just to learn from. So before we received our letter from minor hockey, we'd already been working on strategizing about how we may reopen, if we're allowed to reopen. And so Lynn, Kelly, and myself had a Zoom meeting with 2 representatives from minor hockey and explained the fact that we were already working on it, that our plan is to create a recreation facilities reopening plan similar to the process that we went through for the municipal office, that would outline different procedures and how things were going to be handled from a health and safety perspective and protection of public safety and staff. But it wasn't something that we could have ready and hand to them right that day when they wanted it. We reassured them we're working on it and we'll get the process going. The plan would be reviewed by our health and safety committee and then would be coming to council. We talked that this was only a few weeks ago, so it wouldn't have been ready for this agenda as we don't have any detailed information from the province at all or direction. So we mentioned that the August meeting would be when we would aim to have the plan, if possible, ready to go to council. So I was asked today to just present kind of where we are with that, what it might look like So again, I'm going to be looking off screen here, so I apologize about that. But when we are working through this development of this plan, a lot of it is based on assumptions. Currently, the guidelines are that there can be 10 people on the ice. We're only talking about our facility reopening plan is not just arenas. It has to be other recreation facilities like Fieldhouse, but for this discussion, we'll talk about arenas. 10 people on the ice pad. So through the Hockey Canada, we had a Hockey Canada webinar, that our Zoom meeting that all across the country people sat in on. And it was explained that the scenario that's being used right now, 10 people in the building or on the ice, that's 8 kids, 1 coach, and a second adult. You have to have 2 adults. So no physical contact, 6 feet apart, come dressed, get your skates on the ice, 15 minutes, you're out of the building. Then the building has to be disinfected, and then the next 10 people can come through. So that's the way, more or less, it is now. There can be no competitive sports, no teams, no games, nothing like that at all. And just before I kind of go through some of the details, today OHF sent out Ontario Hockey Federation sent out an email and a memo, basically stating that there has been no decision by the OMHA of if and when play of any sort will happen yet. So there's no date that they have said hockey will resume at. September, October, November, December. There's no date yet, and that was dated today, the 7th. So as we work through these plans, some of the things that is essential, in my opinion, is that our strategy has to be based on the recommendations from the province, from Public Health, Ontario Recreation Facilities Association guidelines, a report that they put out, the best practices document, which is that, Hockey Canada's return to safe hockey guidelines document, Ontario Hockey Federation return to hockey framework document. All of those things have to be considered as we anticipate how we may open the facilities again. The health and safety of the municipal staff and the public has to be the primary concern for the municipality. These facilities, as much as they are community centers, they are a workplace for our staff. So we need to make sure that we can provide a service safely and make sure that our staff can go home safe in the same condition that they came to work in. So we have to think about it from two perspectives. So in my opinion, everything, all the protocols and things that we have to put in place have to be viewed through that public safety lens. So some of the guidelines that I've been working on as I've been going through trying to create a document on it is, all I can do is based on what is out there today, which is what I just kind of explained briefly. So we went around the facilities and did a bunch of measurements based on physical distancing and so on. And again, with the assumption that we're going to have to operate on the same, guidelines that are going to be put forth by the province, all the public spaces will have to be limited in numbers of people that will be using them. So for an example, the lobby at the Campbellford Arena, if you think about that, right now, every single person, well, 90% of the people go through that front door. That area could really, with social distancing, only hold about 4 or 5 people. Otherwise, you'd be almost shoulder to shoulder. So we've looked at traffic control plans, or foot travel control plans in that building, and we have those ready. But we're not going to be presenting them to you today. But essentially, it'd be one-way traffic going in one door for skaters and out another door. And spectators or public or a parent, if they are allowed in the building, would have to go through a separate door and out another door. we have to try to alleviate any congestion points and having people being stuck in hallways and so on. So some of the considerations that we need to think about is what was just discussed at the council meeting was about masks, whether we're going to, as a municipality, require people to wear a mask in the arenas if distancing can't be maintained. And then the question is, how does that get enforced? The other thing we did is measured all the rooms, so the dressing rooms and so on. So basically, all the dressing rooms that would hold essentially a team before would now hold about 5 people, based on having 6 feet apart every person. So, you know, you can see that severely limits the amount of people that could effectively use that room without sitting on top of each other. Hockey Canada as well is recommending that only one parent accompany a young skater, and only if that is needed. Right now, there's no spectators allowed in any of the facilities in the Toronto area, unless that's just changed the last time I checked. Another thing that we have to consider is that absolutely no garbage, debris, tissues, anything else, nothing can be left on the ground. We know dressing rooms are usually a pigsty at the end. It will be the responsibility of the user to ensure that everything is picked up and put in the garbage. Players' benches, Hockey Canada is recommending that hand sanitizer and Kleenexes and paper towels are on the benches. That is something that would be the responsibility, I would recommend would be the responsibility of the user group rather than the municipality. We would provide a waste receptacle in each one, and that would be emptied after each use, and then while that benches are disinfected. The level of service required to maintain a building under the new world, I guess, is considerable. So one thing that they're recommending through the ORFA, they're suggesting rather that public health will say that all public high touch points, so that is all door handles, hallways, washrooms, areas around the auditorium, so on. All of those areas need to be cleaned and disinfected every 15 minutes. That's what is recommended right now, or suggested through the ORFA document. The dressing rooms have to be cleaned and disinfected in between each use. The benches and stands have to be cleaned and disinfected between each use, and so on. So, you know, currently, regular operations of an arena are completed by one staff. That can no longer be the case. So we will be coming forward to council with budgetary requirements or ramifications rather of having the facilities open. I'll speak to that a little bit further as I go on here. One thing that we may need to consider is whether if we do open, if one group comes in, the doors get locked to not have another group in until this first group leaves completely. That's common practice right now in some facilities that are being used, so that you don't have congestion and people walking past other people. As I said, right now, everyone has to come dressed to the facility, so fully dressed. You come in, you put your skates on, 15 minutes from the time you enter the building onto the ice. 15 minutes from the time your ice time ends, you have to be out of the building. No showers, those kind of things. And that's what's in place now. So that's really all we can use as a framework moving forward. It's essential that all parties, municipality, users, parents, follow the rules and protocols. If they don't, it says very clearly in all the documents that if the user groups do not follow the protocols put in place by the municipality, that the facilities may be closed. And as I mentioned, that's already happened across the country in a few places. All the onus for this is not just on the municipality either. The responsibility of the user group is significant. So one thing that as well that was in the documents for those who may have read it is that owners, they call municipalities, in our case, that own a facility and operate it, our rules and guidelines can supersede the province. We can't be any less than what provincial standard is, but we can increase it to make sure that we have a safe facility to run. And it's very clear there that the users must follow those. One thing that is adamant is that there can be no spitting in the facility at all. If anyone has seen spitting in a facility, the user group has to take action, and that person has to leave the building, and there will be ramifications for that. It cannot happen. And we all know that happens everywhere, in the hallways, in the dressing rooms, in the benches, on the ice, happens all the time. So that's going to be an extremely difficult habit for people to break. We don't know what will happen. To get a little bit graphic, people often vomit on the bench or around the benches during a game. So I don't know what will happen in the future with that due to infectious disease. So some of the user groups' responsibilities, and this is what the groups are all waiting for, and these are just, this isn't anything official, of course, because it would be coming to council. But the user group responsibilities would be to provide the municipality with the required documentation, which is first and foremost a specific return to play plan for every facility that they use. So essentially that plan will say who will cover who, what, when, where, and how. So who in the organization is going to be responsible for making sure that the people are in and out when they're supposed to be, if they're coming dressed, who's going to be potentially manning the door to make sure that their users are coming in and going directly to the room that they're supposed to be if dressing rooms are provided, because right now they're not. You know, when it's going to happen, they can only be, you know, there's a lot of those things. They're not difficult plans, but it's something that has to be very specific and thought out so that they're accountable, they know what, we know what they need to do, and likewise, our rules will be posted so they know what we're going to do. We all know the why all this is happening. So it's that return to play plan is going to be essential for every user that comes into a facility. Whether if we allow men's groups, for an example, they would have to have certificate of insurance and a certificate of validation from Hockey Canada if that applies. So any main like OMHA, all those groups would have to have a certificate of validation, which is issued by Health Canada, proving that they are trained and the programming is up to the level it's supposed to be. And the certificate insurance, which we were told by Hockey Canada will cover infectious disease for the next 2 years or so, and then that's it. So after that, most likely, all users will have to have a separate rider on their insurance to cover for that. The rules and protocols set out by the municipality will have to be followed. They'll have to ensure, user groups will have to ensure that participants in the facility are supervised at all times and provide all the personal protective equipment that are required. For face masks, for example, hand sanitizer on the benches, Kleenex paper towels on the benches. It would be very, very costly for us to provide that on the bench. We'll be providing in all the common spaces and so on, but that would be a very difficult thing for us to do. It's a recommendation from Hockey Canada, and not that the municipality would provide it, just that they are there. They need to provide part of that plan. They'd have to provide a list of executive members and volunteers and outlining their responsibilities on monitoring the door, etc. What I just talked about. Ensure that all debris is picked up, and then follow anything in terms of reporting any illnesses. So they're saying that contact tracing is something that's important. I know right now you go to a restaurant, you have to put your name and address where you are, phone number, in case something happens, they can contact you. That's a reality in this new world. So it's outlined in the documents that they are to report to the municipality if anybody has any illness or symptoms at all, sickness, fever, sneezing, whatever, and then we will have to figure out the next steps between the user and the municipality. So our responsibilities that we're working on right now are to follow all the recommendations, protocols from public health, the Ministry of Labor, provincial orders, etc. Review and receive and review and approve all the return to play plans for the user groups. We would post all the traffic, foot traffic control plans in the building so that everyone knows where to go. You know, putting arrows on the ground, signs for physical distancing. We'd be developing large signs to go outside each building, explaining what the rules are and the requirements, if face masks are worn, etc., social distancing, and so on. We'd be providing hand sanitizer stations throughout the buildings at strategic locations. And that's to be determined. We're still trying to find a source for freestanding hand sanitizer stands. It seems to be incredibly difficult to find those these days. And depending on what the requirements are for cleaning protocols, which as I say, are not all out yet, we can infer from some of the ones the provincial government has put out, but that high-use touch points in community centers and so on would be cleaned, disinfected on a continuous basis, so every 15 minutes. Dressing rooms after each use, benches after each use. It is recommended through the Hockey Canada guideline that the user group disinfects the bench on their way out, so our staff can go in and clean, but the benching where people have been sitting is already cleaned. We have to do this basically a whole arena after each use, and same with the auditorium. So one of the things in the foot traffic control plans is what areas of the facilities will remain open to be used and what areas won't be. Just to try to limit the use of the building and still provide adequate space for everyone that might be in there. So, you know, at the risk of being too wordy, that's what we're working on. I have, further to that, I have organized a Zoom meeting with all the municipalities in the county every 2 weeks. So we'll be having one next week as well. So we did have our first meeting I called I believe it was last week. Most municipalities haven't even started looking at this process yet. We're still trying to figure out as well if we can open a splash pad or a pool, and what might be needed for that. And we're getting Blueloos out in the community, let alone trying to figure out how we're going to open one of these facilities. So across the board, pretty much, other than Cobourg and Port Hope are kind of on the same level as we are. We'll be discussing it next week and see if anyone's made any more progress on it. But Port Hope, for an example, they've told their users that, all they've done rather is told their users that they need a return to play plan, and they'll be giving that to their Director of Emergency Services for approval and the health unit for approval before staff approve it, and then they're allowed to be able to use the facility if and when they open. So we'll be meeting next week as well, and I'm going to be reaching out to invite other municipalities actually outside of our county, namely Havelock and Norwood, if they wish to participate, just so that we're all kind of on the same page. And then we'll refine this document and come up with something that will go to health and safety and then to council. The decision will need to be made by council if and how the facility is going to run. I alluded to the fact that our staffing levels and therefore our budget will not be sufficient to operate under these current restrictions. So potentially the usable hours, the rentable hours, due to the increase in cleaning that's required, will be cut roughly in half. So primetime ice is from 4 to 11, and no one rents 4 o'clock, so from 5 to 11. So, and even at 11, it's not really used. So, you know, you may be looking at 3 or 4 rentals an evening to give enough time for facility be cleaned between each use. And with that, so your potential revenue is going to be decreased significantly, and our wage lines will be probably doubled, if not tripled, to have the staff in the facility to do the work that's required. So we're working on this plan right now, and then I'll be looking at the staff requirements. And my hope is that I can bring all that to council at the same time. That's my report.
Thanks, Peter. Any questions? Michael?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. One point that kind of really stuck out to me, Peter, just at the end that when you were talking, is having the user group or the volunteer group perform that sanitation task. And I know it's trying to ease one step that staff, and it's a hard thing to trust. That someone's going to actually do what they're required to do. So that's something that really stuck with me, and I'm sure that's something that you're going to be looking at is the difference in user pay fees. Everything that we see from now on, whether it's facilities, arenas, restaurant prices, everything's going to start to creep up as much as we may wish they didn't. So that user pay schedule is probably going to drastically change on your end.
Anyone else? Ken?
No, I'm just looking at the amount of onus comes back to staff to thoroughly clean between each user group. That is a significant amount of work to make sure it's thoroughly done, as well as the impact of contact tracing, if that has to be looked after too. So certainly it involves an awful lot from staff to even make this happen, if it can happen.
Exactly. Rose?
Sorry, I forget to unmute myself half the time. Yeah, I agree. I'm looking at the Peter's report, and thank you very much, Peter, for being so thorough with this. There's a lot of information there. But I'm looking at the added expense. I'm looking at the amount of children that would be able to participate. It's rather discouraging. And I go back again to a very main point that I feel is the fact that we're going into the cold weather, and we know that's when the little bugs start to run around, and we know kids all get them. And I honestly feel that the risk of infections going forward, unless we've come a long way between now and then, not just for the public, but for our staff. I'm concerned about, I know, Peter, you said that they have to bring their own, basically, rider, their insurance. I'm still concerned if something were to happen. Everybody knows that it comes back to the municipality, that we're the ones with the deep pockets. We're the ones that approved it. So I really am still very concerned about that, and wouldn't mind getting a legal opinion on that. And maybe staff already have, and you can answer that for me. It's just so onerous, and I don't see how, like, minor hockey relies on receipts at the door. Well, there isn't going to be receipts at the door, I understand. Am I wrong in that? Am I correct in assuming that there won't be big crowds in the arena there to support? It's just the players and one parent?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, there's no indication either way, but if we infer from what's going on in the world, occupancy would be significantly reduced if allowed at all. NHL is happening this year at a reduced level with no spectators. I know we're not talking about that specifically, but that's just an example. You know, even if the province said you could have 100 people in the building, if it's not feasible to be safe with that, the municipality may decide it can only be 25 people in the building or nobody in the building. So, you know, that's something that we have to look at, and we don't have an answer for it.
I really think we might be a little, I know that hockey needs an answer now. That get organized, etc. But I really think we're putting the cart ahead of the horse here. I think we need to step back, and if you go on some of the hockey websites, and I forget the one I was on, and I'm a hockey fan. I played hockey in the Campbellford Arena. They haven't even put out yet the courses for the officials. It is usually out June the 1st. So I believe it's the 08 Ontario Hockey Association that they get their reaccreditation through, referees, etc. And that's usually out June 1st, and it's not on their websites now. So they're holding back. And that's how I read it. So I really do feel that we're might be a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
Well, thank you, Kathy, and then Rick.
Well, I want to thank Peter and his staff for the work that they've done. And I know he said he might be getting a little wordy and a little detailed. I think that's what we need at this point in time. I don't think we can gloss over the importance of the sort of things that he and his staff and the rest of our municipal staff in their own departments are having to deal with. There's those little sayings, you know, we're all in this together. Well, definitely we are. And some of us, particularly at the municipalities where the buck seems to be stopping, we're the ones that are the recipients, and we're the ones that are carrying out the decisions that are being made at the upper levels. But this is the closest to the citizens that it gets. And this is where the hard news is going to be. First of all, we don't know. We're trying to find out. We're trying to find out very quickly, but we don't even have the resources to go to because they don't know either. And I think that this is one of the things we're going to be learning as we get a little more into the details of. It's one thing to be able to open the doors and taking 1 or 2 people at a time. But when we're looking at resuming the sports, the recreation, even just the stuff that's involved in having a library book returned, you know, in a plastic bag and letting it sit on the shelves for hours and days till it can go out to somebody else, because if we wipe it down, then we ruin the print. All those little fine details, that's what we're dealing with right now. And I think it's great that the public is asking those questions. But I think, unfortunately, in some cases, we're going to have to deliver messages that they're not going to be happy with, and that they're going to have to work with us on, and they're going to have to bear with us as we do our best. And I think it's a fabulous idea that we're sharing the information we have. I think we should see more of that, and let other communities. I know with the Connection and the Belleville Hockey Group, they're struggling with the same thing, and there's a huge, beautiful rec center basically sitting empty. The pools, the ice pads, everything. People dying to get in there, they can't. So thank you, Peter, for what you've done. I guess there's more to come, and I just think the more information we can get out to people to see what we're doing for them, the better. And then the rest is, your guess is as good as mine on what's going to happen.
Thank you. Richard.
Just quickly, Peter, you mentioned the 15-minute time. I didn't quite understand that. Are they only allowed on the ice for 15 minutes?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, there was 2 15-minute things in there. So right now, a group could enter a building in Toronto, for an example. So all their warm-up would have to take place outside. They come into the building fully dressed right before their ice time. They put their skates on. If there's most buildings, we don't have it. Warkworth does, but an area where you can sit and put your skates on, because dressing rooms and showers are closed. This is currently. So you basically come in the building, you're on the ice immediately, right? Then right after your ice ends, say at 10 minutes to the hour. 15 minutes after that, they have to be out of the building completely. Then the building can get cleaned. Then it reopens for the next group. So that's essentially the way it happens right now. The other 15 minutes is what ORFA is recommending or suggesting might be the recommended cleaning frequency for common high-use touch points in community buildings, recreation buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Why not? I think we're gonna be. Some of these people quit talking.
we'll go to the motion. Be resolved that the correspondence received June the 23rd, 2020 from Nancy Boyvan, Campbellford Minor Hockey, future opening of arena, be received for information.
Bob.
Rose, second by Rick. Take the vote, please, Doug.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship.
Thank you. We are now at bylaws. Bylaw number 2020-56. Be resolved that bylaw number 2020-056, a bylaw to amend bylaw 2007-36, being a bylaw to regulate vehicular parking within the limits of the municipality of Trent Hills on streets, parking lots, and parks, be read a first, second, and third time, passed and properly signed and sealed by the clerk and mayor. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Ken. Second by Mike.
Bob.
Take the toll, please.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes,
carried by 7, your worship.
thank you. We have no notice of motions. At this time, we'll go into the closed session. I'll read the motion. Be resolved that we do now go into closed session at 4:30 p.m. to discuss litigation affecting the municipality. We have a mover and a seconder, please.
I'll move.
Moved by Kathy, seconded by Rick. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Mayor Crate,
Yes.
carried by 7, your worship. If you
Thank
could
you.
give me a moment, please. I
Will you
need,
let me know when you're ready?
yes, I need to stop the live feed and I need to pause our recording. I will attempt to restart the live feed as we are prepared to rise from closed session. If I'm unsuccessful, we will just be uploading the recording after the meeting for those items emanating from closed session.
Thank you.
Stop the live stream. And we have recorded resuming and are prepared to rise from closed session, your worship.
Thank you. Be it resolved now, we do now rise at 5:12 p.m. and report on closed session item 15B, litigation affecting the municipality cannabis operation enforcement. Mover, Michael, and seconded by Ken. Call the vote, please, Doug.
Councillor Metcalf,
Yes.
Councillor Redden,
Yes.
Councillor Tully,
Yes.
Councillor Bradney,
Yes.
Councillor English,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan,
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
And just in that motion, we will
Oh,
include.
Worship, this is just to rise and report.
Oh, okay. Yes,
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
thank you. And we are now at item B, litigation. Be it resolved that confidential verbal information presented by Jim Peters, Director of Planning and Development, re-litigation affecting the municipality, be received, and that a letter be forwarded with our concerns to the our MP, our MPP, the Minister of Health federally, Minister Steve Clark provincially, AMO, and Roma. Moved by, oh, you have a question, Mike?
Nope, so moved.
Moving it, and Kathy is seconding it. Is that what I see? Okay. Could you call the vote then, Doug?
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Brodney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes,
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
thank you. We're at the confirmation bylaw. Be resolved that bylaw number 2020-057, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting held on Tuesday, July 2nd, 2020. Be read a first, second, and third time, passed, properly signed and sealed by the clerk and mayor. Can I get a mover and seconder for that?
So move.
Moved by Rose, seconded by Rick. Call the vote.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Brodney?
Yes.
Councillor English?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
Carried by 7, Your Worship.
Thank you. And a note that the next council meeting will be held on Tuesday, August the 4th, 2020 at 2 p.m. Be it resolved that we do now adjourn at 5:15 p.m. Do I have a
Bob,
mover?
can I interject? Bob, can I interject?
Yes.
Bob, I would like to join with council in expressing our sympathy to you in the loss of your brother, Peter. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you. Rick, you probably want to move that.
I'll go ahead and adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And seconded by,
Gene?
okay, thank you. And a vote, Doug?
Councillor English?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Kelleher McLennan?
Yes.
Councillor Metcalf?
Yes.
Councillor Redden?
Yes.
Councillor Tully?
Yes.
Councillor Brodney?
Yes.
Mayor Crate?
Yes.
We are adjourned, Your Worship, and